Hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 5, Corrections. I graded several assignments yesterday, so hopefully you all received your new grades. If you're having any issues, please let me know. We're nearing the end. The last day is the 11th, and then I have to submit the grades, so please stay on task. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Let's look at the course objectives. We're going to identify the readings and resources. We'll review chapters 9, 10, and 11. Describe the Module 5 corrections training handout. We can explain the difference between traditional and non-traditional corrections. We'll explore the Federal Bureau prisons. Thank you. We will classify prison security levels and their necessity. We'll explore alternate forms of sentencing and when an offender may receive this type of sentencing. And then I will share the Module 3 live classroom question. All right. Readings, chapters 9, 10, and 11. Also, Rasmussen put this link up, how to create a pamphlet or a brochure. So that's what you're going to be creating for Module 5. So I encourage you to click on the link and go explore what Rasmussen offers you. In the readings, Chapter 9, remember, anytime you see this icon, you know you'll find the same information in our course announcements. Chapter 9 continued. Chapter 10. Chapter 11. And then our assignment. Please read the scenario, the instructions, and the type of file you should use. So I'll let you read that. And then instructions. The difference between traditional and non-traditional corrections and examples of each, security levels for prisons and why each are necessary, the alternate forms of sentencing and when an offender may receive this type of sentencing. I've brought together in this live class several resources to help you answer these questions. And then look at the type of document you should be using preferred application and format. So any handout or method software you want to use, feel free. Just please do not post PDF files. I do not have a PDF file opener. I have to find one online. If I cannot open your work, I will not be able to grade your work. No links to outside files, just put the file in the Dropbox so I can read it. This is imperative this time because we only have a few days to get your grades submitted. So please, no PDF files. Upload the file in the Dropbox. No links will be good. All right, let's listen to our assignment.
We are moving right along in our police officer journey. Today, we're stepping into the shoes of a seasoned police officer tasked with mentoring a new recruit. Together, we've just made an arrest for a DUI second offense, and our offender is curious about the jail process. Join me as we navigate this scenario and prepare a training handout for our upcoming session on the corrections system and sentencing options. Picture this. You and your new partner have just arrested a driver for a DUI second offense. Local policy mandates that the driver be jailed and booked, with a bail amount set at $1,000. On the way to jail, the offender turns to you and asks about the process. Given that it's also your partner's first trip to jail, You take charge of the conversation and explain the entire process. Now let's discuss the specifics of the training handout. Distinguish between traditional and non-traditional corrections. Provide examples of each to illustrate the varied approaches within the correctional system. Detail the security levels for prisons and explain why each level is necessary. Help your mentees understand the sine qua of maintaining security within correctional facilities. Explore alternate forms of sentencing and discuss when an offender may receive this type of sentencing. Highlight the flexibility in sentencing options and the considerations that influence these decisions. Remember, this training handout is not just a document. It's a tool to enhance understanding and foster effective communication within our law enforcement team.
Okay, let's look at the grading rubric. Always pay attention to the master column. Okay, please, please, please use that. I use this grading rubric when I grade your paper. I've been noticing that a few students have plagiarism issues, 50 to 60% plagiarism, sometimes 100% plagiarism. Guys, you won't earn credit if you give me a 100% plagiarism document. Right. Your points will decrease if you give me a high originality score. So please be original so you can max out on this. Moving to traditional corrections. You have the definition, systems focusing on punishment and deterrence, and then I provided 3 examples: jails and prisons, probation and parole, and solitary confinement. So how many people are locked up in the United States? You can tell by this graph. Look where they're placed. You've got the local jails, the state prisons, and the federal. Also, when you get this, you might be able to read the text that goes around it. Here's 1 in 3 people behind bars is in a jail. Most have yet to be tried in court. Some people detain them even after they've been to court and sentenced because they're waiting for open bed in a prison, if that's where they're going. You can read the statistics and different types of crimes. So, how's your state doing? You'll have a link to this. This is actually an active link. If you just find your state, you can click on it and find more information related to your state. Non-traditional corrections. We have a definition and 4 examples. Give you a chance to glance at this. All right, now we have a question. Why non-traditional corrections matter? Here's some reasons. It reduces recidivism. It addresses underlying causes such as addiction. It's cost effective, and it supports reintegration. If you keep the offender in an alternative setting in their neighborhood, they will be able to maintain contact with their family and friends, which will help reintegrate them back into the community. What is the difference between traditional and non-traditional corrections? I created this little table for you to compare traditional to non-traditional. So what kind of differences do you see when you look at this table? You can see the criteria that was used for both the traditional as well as the non-traditional corrections. And now we're going to move into the Federal Bureau of Prisons. This map shows the location of the federal prisons in the United States, kind of clustered in California, and then they come over here. I'm not sure where each of you lives, but kind of look at what's happening. One area that does not seem to have any federal prisons is right here: Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho. I wonder why. But they are located on the outskirts of our country. Federal Bureau of Prisons in your state. If you come over here to this site, you know I put links to all of our information on a course announcement. So I encourage you to look at it, find your state, and explore. There are 5 prison security levels in the Federal Bureau of Prisons: minimum, low, medium, high, and administrative facilities. You have a brief description of each and why they use that particular security level. So why security levels are necessary? They protect the staff and inmates, they prevent escapes and maintain order, they match custody level to different risks, and they provide the appropriate programming and rehabilitation. And some people think that we use prisons for punishment only. I hope we're also using it to rehabilitate, because the majority of the offenders will be released back into the community. If we have not been focusing on rehabilitation in prisons, then a lot of the inmates we released will be returning.
So they say once you are indicted by the feds that your case is already over. Now, that's only partially true, but the government does have about a 98% conviction rate. However, determining guilt or innocence is only one part of the equation. From there, the defendants are concerned about the sentence length or the amount of prison time that they will serve and where they will spend it. Because in the federal system, you can wind up anywhere from a camp that's more akin to a dormitory at a college, or you can be placed in a maximum security lockdown facility in a tiny cell for most of the day, every day. So how does the Bureau of Prisons? So they say once you are indicted by the feds in a maximum security lockdown facility in a tiny cell for most of the day, every day. So how does the Bureau of Prisons determine where an inmate will serve his or her time? Well, you're about to find out.
So now we're going to glance at some of the pictures that relate to the different types of federal prisons, starting with the federal prison camp located in Pensacola, Florida. I encourage you to read the information that is underneath each of the images you will be seeing. One thing you're going to notice is that a lot of these look quite similar from the outside, but they do have different programs, punishment levels, etc. behind the walls. Okay, now we're going
Hi,
to
everyone. This is
compare
Justin Paperny with White Collar
prison
Advice, and
camp
today I'm going
to
to talk
low
with my
security.
mentor and colleague, Michael Santos. Michael, many of the clients, by way of White Collar Advice, end up at a federal prison camp. Some, however, do go to a low, and there are many questions about the differences between a low and a camp. You, of course, served 26 consecutive years in prisons of all security levels, including a low and a camp. So on the top of your mind, are there any significant differences that you can share with our viewers?
Absolutely. There's a big difference between a low and a camp. As you mentioned, I served time in prisons of every security level, and I can tell you every security level where you drop, there is a huge difference. Now, that doesn't mean that an individual can't live a life of meaning and relevance regardless of where he or she is confined, but there are big differences between security levels. With a low, a problem that a lot of people have is they have this misperception that it is dangerous. Now, the reality is it's dangerous living out here in society. Okay, it doesn't matter where you are, you're always vulnerable. You're always living with people, and although you can control your own behavior, you can't control the behavior of other people. Okay, but in a low, there are a number of people who could very easily serve their time in a camp. The only reason that they're in a low is because a lot of times is because either they are an immigrant, they're not a U.S. citizen, and so they would be in a camp, but their citizenship precludes them, or they were convicted of a crime that has such a high dollar amount that requires them to have a longer sentence, and so they are serving time inside of a fence because their release date is beyond 10 years away. That said, anyone who is inside of a low can really find more opportunities than exist in a camp. You see, a camp generally has a population of between 100 people on a sparsely populated camp to as many as 1,000 people at a big camp like Maxwell in Alabama. Most lows are going to have populations of 1,000 to 2,000 people inside of one institution, one facility. And as a consequence of them having 2,000 people, you can expect that there are going to be a lot more programs and a lot more activities to pursue in a low. So that's a huge advantage for people. When you have 2,000 people around you, you will always find somebody that you can connect with, somebody that you can be friends with. There's just such a wide variety of people. When I was in a camp, I was with Wall Street bankers, I was with medical doctors, with surgeons, with entrepreneurs, with well-educated people, and I was with gang members, and I was with, inveterate criminals. The reality is, though, you can find your niche inside of a low. You can make things happen. You may have more access to visiting than in a camp. You will definitely have more access to programs to help you pass your time wisely. You will definitely have access to different types of jobs that don't exist in a camp.
So let me
on to the Coleman Medium Security Federal Prison. High security United States penitentiaries. We have 17. All right, I found this interesting video. Perhaps you've heard the name Bryan Kohberger. He's the one who killed the 4 college students. He was supposed to get the death penalty, but he changed his plea. And because of that, he'll be spending the rest of his time in the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. So this is not active. I will put the link to this video in a course announcement. It appears to be a very interesting video. All right, next, we're going to go to the Administrative Bureau of Prison Facilities. All right, so we've looked at several of the prisons. We noted how the violence level changes. The more secure the place is, the more apt you are to have violence. We also saw what type of people stay there, types of programs that are offered. And now let's look at Supermax. By the way, this video, or this image, that's Chicago's prison, Metropolitan Correctional Center. It's located in downtown Chicago. And it looks like almost any other building. But note the shape of the windows. They're long and slender. Why? Because that prevents inmates from trying to escape. The 6th prison security level is called Supermax. You see the little house and how much room they have and what they have.
ADX Florence, built south of Florence, Colorado in 1994, is the most secure prison in the United States prison system. America's only federal Supermax prison is home to some of the world's most dangerous criminals, including names you might recognize. Today, we will tell you about the Florence Supermax, America's toughest prison. Number 7. What is a Supermax prison? Supermax prisons are the highest level security prisons, designed to hold inmates that pose extreme security threats. Inmates have little to no time outside of their cells, very few activities, and very little contact with other humans. Alcatraz is considered to be an early example of what would become the Supermax model. The controversial penitentiary on the outskirts of Florence, a small rural town once founded as a pass-through for coal-carrying trains in the 1800s, first started housing inmates in 1994. Today, ADX is home to 361 of the country's most high-profile criminals. Prisoners here, we're talking serial killers, terrorists, mobsters, cult leaders, drug kingpins, and those deemed too violent to live among a general prison population, live in near continuous solitary confinement. Inmates spend 23 or more hours a day isolated in soundproof 7 by 12-foot cells outfitted with a single 4-inch slit for a window. Due to these conditions, the ADX has been at the center of contentious debate about human rights and solitary confinement's effect on mental health. As Robert Hood, a former warden of the ADX, told the New York Times in 2015, this place is not designed for humanity. In fact, the decision by a London court in early 2021 not to extradite Julian Assange to American soil can be partially attributed to his possible assignment to ADX. The judge, Vanessa Baratzer, said that her impression of the WikiLeaks founder's mental state was such that it would be oppressive to extradite him to the United States of America. The ruling implied that 23-hour-a-day isolation would be too iron-fisted for someone exhibiting depressive and suicidal behavior. Assange is currently jailed in southeast London. The last time ADX made headlines for a high-profile individual was in 2019, when Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the leader of Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel, was relocated to Colorado after being sentenced to life plus 30 years on international drug trafficking charges. With a propensity for violence and access to near unlimited resources, El Chapo was an obvious candidate for the ADX. He's twice escaped from maximum security prisons in Mexico. His jailbreak from El Altiplano in the summer of 2015, in which he drove a motorcycle through a mile-long underground tunnel, is the stuff of movies. As was his recapture by Mexico's Marines in January 2016, which was preceded by a massive 6-month manhunt, a deadly gunfight, and El Chapo slipping out of an escape hatch hidden behind a closet mirror. No one has ever escaped the ADX, although there has been one homicide within its walls, which is why it's been called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Most prisoners get out only in death, via transfer to another facility, or in very few cases, if they live long enough to see their release date. Number 6. The U.S.'s most secure prison. Commonly referred to as a Supermax prison, it has 490 beds in a compound which encompasses 37 acres. The prison was designed to house prisoners deemed too dangerous or high profile for regular incarceration, and nearly 95% of all inmates that have been sent to Florence were transfers with histories of violent behavior in other prison facilities. ADX Florence is known for its harsh conditions. Inmates are kept in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. The hour they are allowed out is into a bigger cell with vaulted ceilings called the empty swimming pool. This room has a 4-inch by 4-foot skylight as the only window. It is designed to prevent the prisoners from knowing where they are, and they still spend this time alone. For at least the first 3 years, prisoners are not allowed to come in contact with other prisoners at any time, anywhere on the premises. Over time, good behavior can earn inmates more outside time. And for the most fortunate, a possible transfer back to a less secure prison can await. The cell furniture is limited to a desk, stool, and a bed, and each is constructed of poured concrete. The toilets are designed to shut off if plugged, and the showers are on timers. Rooms may have mirrors, lights, radios, and in very rare instances, televisions, but these are used as privileges based on behavior and are seldom awarded. There is no mess hall. Food is hand-delivered to each inmate by the guards. The prison has a multitude of motion detectors and cameras, 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors, and 12-foot-high razor-wire fences. It would be difficult to classify the prisoners as being unfairly treated, given the circumstances which likely got them there. Former ADX wardens have described the place as a cleaner version of hell. The prison operates under the strategy of sensory deprivation and solitude. Inmates are left to their own thoughts, which often leads to hallucinations, memory loss, and increasingly irrational behavior. Number 5. ADX has a reputation for being escape-proof. El Chapo has escaped prison twice while being held by Mexican authorities, in 2015 and 2001. But ADX is different. Nicknamed the Alcatraz of the Rockies, no one has escaped the facility located in the high desert about 2 hours south of Denver since it opened in 1994. Inmates are housed in soundproof 7 by 12-foot cells for 23 hours of the day in permanent lockdown, with no contact with other inmates. Staff members are carefully vetted and have little direct contact with inmates. Each cell contains a bunk, desk, stool, and shelf made of concrete, and a steel sink and toilet. Inmates can see outside of their cell through a single window that is 3 feet high and 4 inches wide, according to the New York Times. Most cells have televisions. According to the SF Gate, ADX is the only prison specifically designed to keep every occupant in near total solitary confinement. Number 4. ADX was born after the killing of 2 correctional officers. According to the Washington Post, ADX was conceived in the wake of the killing of 2 correctional officers on October 22, 1983, at the Marion Federal Prison in Illinois, what was at the time the toughest federal prison in the country. After their deaths, Marion was changed into an all-lockdown facility and served as the test model for other Supermax lockdown facilities like Pelican Bay and eventually ADX. Number 3. Worse than death. Current C1 columnist Robert Hood, who served as ADX warden from 2002 to 2005, described life in ADX in stark terms to CNN. As soon as they come through the door, you see it in their faces. That's when it really hits you. You're looking at the beauty of the Rocky Mountains in the backdrop. When you get inside, that is the last time you will ever see it. The Supermax is life after death. It's long-term. In my opinion, it's far much worse than death. Number 2. It holds many high-profile inmates. A facility for the worst of the worst obviously holds a lot of criminals with household names. ADX Florence is home to some of this country's most violent and evil criminals. It is also the #1 holding facility for convicted terrorists. One of the most famous residents is Thomas Silverstein, a convicted murderer and former Aryan Brotherhood leader who has committed 4 additional murders while imprisoned. Silverstein currently holds the record of being the longest resident of solitary confinement in the United States prison system, having been in solitary since 1983. Silverstein is often credited with being one of the reasons the ADX Supermax was designed, due to his uncontrollable activities in other prisons. Historically, the addition of another life sentence to a prisoner who already has one hasn't proved successful. Harsher penalties were needed to restore order and deter prisoners from killing prison guards. The threat of being transferred to solitary confinement at ADX Florence is the best deterrent in the prison system the United States has against violent crime. Number 1. The problem with Supermax prisons. Daniel Faithy, the director of the National Prison Project at the American Civil Liberties Union, wrote for the ACLU about this problem, saying, "In overcrowded prison systems, the typical response has been to fill the remaining Supermax cells with nuisance prisoners, those who file lawsuits, violate minor prison rules, or otherwise annoy staff, but by no stretch of the imagination require the extremely high security of a Supermax facility." Thus, in Wisconsin's Supermax, one of the worst was a 16-year-old car thief. 20-year-old David Tracy hanged himself in a Virginia Supermax. He had been sent there at age 19, with a 2.5-year sentence for selling drugs. The story doesn't stop in prison, though. While some in Supermax prisons serve life sentences to completion and others commit suicide, the overwhelming majority of these prisoners are released back into society. In fact, 95% of Supermax prisoners eventually are released. This reality means that everyday Americans should care about what happens in Supermax prisons. Do share with us in the comments if you more about this prison. Please subscribe to The Luxury World. Thanks for watching.
Now we'll look at the pros and cons of Supermax. Give you a minute to look at this slide. Remember, you will be getting a copy of this after our meeting today. Now we'll compare the United States penitentiaries. We're comparing penitentiary to Supermax. You can see the criteria they use to compare it. I wonder if Koberger will ever be sent to a Supermax. They've said one reason why they send people there is because they can't behave and because of grievances they filed. Well, Koberger has not been where it is located for very long, and we know that he has at least filed 3 to 4 grievances. Female offenders. You can see the locations, the type of prison scattered throughout. They even have one in Hawaii.
But now, the U.S. locks more people up than any other country. More than 2 million Americans are in jails or prisons here, and more than 200,000 of those prisoners are female. Amna Nawaz takes a closer look at the conditions faced by women behind bars.
Judy, nearly 30% of all incarcerated women worldwide are in the United States, and the number of women in U.S. prisons has risen more than 700% in the last 40 years. With that increase came a recognition that men and women in custody have different needs. Now, earlier this year, the Department of Justice's Inspector General conducted a review of how the Federal Bureau of Prisons handles female inmates. Leaders from both.
Okay, we're going to stop the video here, but I'll have a link to it inside our course announcement. Let's look at some incarceration rates by countries. Note the legend on the bottom. It indicates why there's different colors on this map. Some numbers. Look where the United States is. What percent are female and male? What year was this data collected? Yes, the U.S. does incarcerate more individuals than any other country. About the age of the inmates. We're starting with less than 18. We have 10 people less than 18. The highest age seems to cluster around 36. And finally, as they start getting older, the numbers start declining. Comparison of federal, state, and local corrections. You can see the criteria used and the divisions. You've got the federal corrections, state corrections, and local corrections. Compare and contrast. Well, some people are lucky. They have an alternative. And here are some. It's always best to keep them out of prison if possible. Now here's some alternatives to incarceration. On this one, if you clicked on one of these images, you would be taken to the site where you could learn more. So why are alternatives used? First-time nonviolent, juvenile offender, substance abuse or mental health, overcrowded facilities, which is a big issue in prison system, and a high rehabilitation potential. If possible, send them to an alternative than to a jail. The recidivism rate will improve, which is the return rate. You treat them like a person, they will treat you equally. All right, now we have the Module 5 live classroom question. Here we're comparing Norway and America.
What'd you say?
Every inmates in Norwegian prison are going back to the society. Everyone. You want people who are angry, or you want people who are rehabilitated.
Literally locked up behind high concrete walls.
The conditions for the prisoners are borderline inhumane.
They don't realize you're a human being. They don't care if you're to them you're not a human being. Until the day the judge says that you didn't commit this crime, you're an animal.
Restorative justice programs. Because our brains are capable of change, we need to take responsibility for our actions, and they need to take responsibility for their rehabilitation.
Prison has lots of possibilities to go to school and everything. I feel that I can become a better person.
Okay, so what you're doing in your Module 5 last classroom question is you're comparing the Norway prison system to the United States prison system. And in a minute, we will look at the instructions. And here's what I would like you to complete for the Module 5 live classroom. And then we have our summary topics which we have discussed during this live class session. If you have any questions, please contact me. You can see my phone number, which is a landline, so it does not accept text messages. Please keep the date November 11th in mind. That's the last day of our class. All work must be submitted by then. You're only supposed to have an extra week to complete some late assignments. So I'm in the process of closing out some of the earlier sessions. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped you, and I hope it helps you complete your hand guide. Remember, please do not submit PDF files. If I can't grade your work, you cannot earn a grade for the assignment. Also, put it in a Word document or some other software program you like, just not a PDF. And please avoid entering the information in the textbook box by our assignment. Sometimes it's very hard for me to gather those, whereas if you had it in a file, I just hit the download file and it comes down beautifully. Remember, if I cannot see your work, I cannot grade your work. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have any questions, reach out to me. You did a fabulous job on Module 4 for the most part. Let's keep it going in Module 5. Thank you for watching.